The galaxy had many legends, but few inspired both fear and admiration across the stars. Among them, one name whispered in dark corridors and over bustling starports was Elias Kane, a human veteran who had vanished 12 years ago. Most believed he was dead, lost to the void after a catastrophic battle that decimated his fleet. Yet somewhere beyond the reaches of the Coalition's reach, Kane survived, alone and enduring, carrying scars on his body and memory alike. On the frontier world of Vardes 9, rumors of Kane's survival had begun to surface again. Alien mercenaries from several civilizations gathered in shadowed corners of crowded markets, exchanging information about the human who had eluded capture for over a decade. Many spoke of his cunning, his ability to turn the deadliest situations into victories, and his ruthless intelligence when survival demanded it. Yet none truly understood what they feared most. He was not merely surviving, he was preparing. In a cratered valley far from any civilized world, Kane crouched behind the jagged remains of a ruined ship. The metal was scorched and twisted, but it provided the perfect cover. From this vantage point, he could see patrol drones sweeping the terrain, their scanning lights cutting through the dusty atmosphere. 12 years had taught him patience, observation, and the art of silence. Every muscle in his body moved with careful intent, honed by years of surviving what others called impossible odds. Kane's ship, a modified human freighter, sat partially buried in sand, disguised to appear as a lifeless wreck. He had rebuilt its systems over months, using scavenged parts and human ingenuity that alien engineers would have dismissed as primitive. Yet it worked, just enough to escape, to observe, to plan. Humanity, Kane knew, did not rely on sheer force alone. Humans adapted. Humans improvised. Humans survived. The sun of Vardes 9 dipped low, casting elongated shadows across the valley. Kane's mind raced not with fear, but with strategy. He knew the alien mercenaries hunting him were confident. They believed a lone human, even one as infamous as Kane, could not possibly resist the might of their coalition. And for a moment, he allowed himself a quiet smile. That arrogance would be their undoing. He remembered the battle that had made him a legend. 12 years ago, he commanded a human task force against a coalition fleet that sought to claim a strategic outpost near the Rim Nebula. The aliens were confident, their numbers overwhelming, their technology advanced. But humans had something no AI or mercenary could predict, ingenuity born of necessity. Kane had outsmarted them, sacrificing much of his fleet to save his crew and achieve a narrow victory. The cost had been great and the human fleet scattered. Kane himself had vanished during the chaos, presumed dead. The aliens had hunted him ever since. For 12 years, every sighting, every trace had been followed by fierce pursuit. And for 12 years, Kane had survived. He had learned their strategies, studied their technology, and turned their strengths into weaknesses. Where they relied on power, he relied on cunning. Where they relied on predictability, he became unpredictable. A distant hum reached Kane's ears, the approach of another patrol squad. He tensed, readying himself. From his pocket, he retrieved a small device, a relic of human engineering which emitted a brief electromagnetic pulse. With careful timing, the pulse disrupted the sensors of the nearest drones, sending them into a temporary loop. The aliens cursed through their comms, unaware of Kane's presence as he slipped silently to higher ground. From his vantage, Kane surveyed the valley. He knew they were closing in, but he also knew the terrain better than any outsider. He had mapped every canyon, ridge, and cave during years of hiding. Every rock, every crevice became part of his strategy. The aliens, he thought, relied on machines to hunt. Humans relied on brains and intuition. That difference had kept him alive for 12 years, and it would keep him alive now. Night fell and Kane moved like a shadow. He avoided open terrain, sticking to rocky outcroppings and hidden passages. He thought of his crew, the friends he had lost, the battles they had fought together. Memories of human courage and sacrifice filled him with determination. Humanity was fragile, yes, but it was also relentless. He had survived when all odds were against him, not because of strength alone, but because humans never gave up. Suddenly, the faint shimmer of alien sensors appeared on the horizon, scanning the valley. Kane paused, pressing his back against the rock. He had anticipated this patrol, anticipated their patterns. He activated another device, a simple mirror setup that reflected sensor signals into false positions. The aliens pursued what they thought was movement, while Kane slipped away unnoticed. As he moved through the valley, Kane reflected on the mission he had been preparing for these past years. The coalition he had fought so long ago had not been idle. They had been constructing a weapon, a project that threatened entire star systems. Humanity's leaders had no knowledge of its scale or capability. Only Kane, with his understanding of alien strategy and technology, had any chance of stopping it. That was why the aliens hunted him, not merely to kill, but to prevent interference with a plan they assumed humans could never comprehend. Hours passed, and Kane reached a hidden cave system he had been using as a base. Inside, he found the tools he needed to maintain his ship and equipment. Supplies were limited, but carefully rationed. He had learned to survive on almost nothing, stretching resources across months if necessary. Human perseverance, he knew, was unmatched when life itself depended on it. He settled near the entrance, repairing a broken navigation array while keeping one eye on the valley. Every sound, every shift in air pressure, every glint of light could indicate danger. Kane had trained himself to sense movement in ways that no alien technology could detect. It was instinct, honed over years, born of a necessity that aliens could never truly understand. As he worked, his mind wandered to the future. The weapon the aliens were building could destabilize entire regions of space. If they succeeded, countless lives across human and alien civilizations alike would be lost. And yet, for all the danger, Kane felt a quiet confidence. Humans were underestimated. They had been underestimated for centuries. And now that same underestimation was his greatest weapon. A sudden vibration shook the cave floor, small but deliberate. Kane froze, his senses alert. The aliens had tracked him closer than he had anticipated. He scanned the area, spotting faint footprints in the sand leading toward the cave entrance. Smiling faintly, he realized the trap he had set. A decoy exit had drawn the patrol past the cave while he remained hidden. Kane moved silently to a vantage point within the cave. From there, he could see the patrol splitting up, combing the valley for signs of him. He had anticipated every move. Every strategy they employed was part of a predictable pattern. Humans had long learned to adapt to unpredictability, but aliens often relied on repetition and logic. That predictability was a mistake, a fatal mistake. Hours later, the patrol withdrew, frustrated and confused. Kane waited until the valley was silent once more. Then carefully, he emerged, checking the terrain for any remaining threats. His body ached, his face lined with scars, but his mind was sharp. Every battle, every escape had taught him that survival was as much mental as it was physical. Human ingenuity, patience, and resilience were weapons more powerful than any blaster or starship. By dawn, Kane returned to his hidden freighter. He climbed aboard and activated the ship's systems, checking the engines and navigation. Despite years of wear and limited resources, the vessel responded. Kane set coordinates for the next stage of his journey, closer to the heart of the Coalition's operations. He would continue to evade the hunters, but more importantly, he would prepare to stop the weapon they had been building. As he lifted off the surface of Vardes 9, Kane gazed out at the stars stretching endlessly before him. 12 years of hunting, 12 years of survival, and countless sacrifices had led him to this moment. He was a single human against a galaxy of adversaries, yet he felt no fear. Humans were resilient, clever, and relentless. The galaxy underestimated them at its peril. In the distance, patrol ships were already combing the skies, searching for the human they believed powerless. Kane smiled faintly, the shadows of the past and present merging in his mind. They had hunted him for 12 years, unaware that he was not merely surviving, but preparing for the one mission only he could complete. Humanity's fate rested not on numbers, not on technology, but on ingenuity, courage, and the relentless will of a single human veteran. And Elias Kane, alone but unbroken, was ready. Elias Kane drifted through the void, his freighter gliding past debris fields and drifting asteroids that littered the outskirts of the Krellin expanse. The stars stretched endlessly before him, but he did not feel the loneliness that had once gnawed at him. He had learned to embrace solitude as an ally, using it to sharpen his mind, to plan, and to anticipate. For 12 years, humans had been underestimated, dismissed, and hunted, but Kane knew that the very thing the aliens feared most was something they could never measure: human ingenuity. The sensors aboard his ship blinked softly, detecting nothing unusual. Kane allowed himself a brief sigh of relief, for now he was alone, but the galaxy's hunters were never far behind. The alien coalition that sought him had expanded their search, deploying scouts, drones, and specialized trackers designed to locate a single human in vast space. Yet Kane had learned to predict them. Every tactic they used had a pattern, every algorithm they depended on a flaw. That flaw was humanity. He navigated toward an abandoned station orbiting a dead planet, one of the many forgotten outposts humans had once used as supply points. The station was partially in ruin, its docking ports corroded and systems long neglected. To anyone else, it was worthless, but to Kane, it was a temporary sanctuary, a place to repair his ship and prepare for the next stage of his mission. Inside the station, the corridors were silent except for the echo of his boots on the metal floor. He moved cautiously, scanning for any signs of intruders. Alien patrols sometimes used remote sensors to scout derelict stations, so he had to remain vigilant. Kane's fingers traced the walls, reading vibrations and sounds in a way that no machine could detect. Years of survival had given him senses sharper than most could imagine, a combination of instinct, training, and experience. At the station's engineering bay, Kane retrieved parts he had hidden months ago. Spare circuits, power cells, and old weapon components cluttered the floor. Carefully, he began repairing his freighter's damaged systems, his hands steady and precise. He did not need speed, he needed accuracy. One mistake could alert the Coalition or cause a malfunction that left him vulnerable in the middle of space. As he worked, Kane's mind wandered to the humans he had left behind. 12 years had separated him from his old comrades, yet he remembered each of them with clarity. Faces, voices, shared jokes, and the bitter taste of loss. Humans were resilient, Kane thought, not because they avoided pain, but because they endured it, transformed it, and used it to grow stronger. That strength had kept him alive when all hope seemed lost. Outside, the stars shifted as the station orbited the dead planet. Kane monitored the sensors, noting a faint, almost imperceptible anomaly. A scout drone had passed close to the station. He remained motionless, letting it pass, observing its movement. The aliens were clever, but their intelligence had limits. They assumed human survival relied on brute force, yet Kane's strength had always been in thinking, predicting, and adapting. Hours passed, and the station remained quiet. Kane finished the repairs, testing the ship's systems one by one. Engines hummed, shields flickered online, and navigation recalibrated. His freighter was ready, yet Kane knew he could not stay here long. The Coalition's search patterns would eventually lead them to every abandoned station, every hidden base. Staying meant risking capture. Moving meant survival, and survival was necessary, not for himself, but for the mission that no other human could undertake. He climbed back into the pilot's seat and initiated a slow departure from the station. The freighter lifted off, its engines barely audible against the hum of space. Kane plotted a course toward a sector rumored to house the alien coalition's experimental fleet. He did not intend to attack them directly. His goal was intelligence. Knowledge of the weapon they were building would give humanity a chance to stop it. No one else could do what he could. As he traveled, Kane reviewed the patterns of alien pursuit. For years, he had tracked their movements, noting patterns in fleet deployment, scouting behavior, and communication protocols. The aliens had power, technology, and numbers, but they were predictable. Kane, a human, was not. He relied on instinct, improvisation, and an understanding of human and alien behavior alike. That combination had kept him alive for over a decade and would continue to do so. A warning beep echoed through the cockpit. Kane's eyes snapped to the display. A small fleet had entered the sector, scanning for anomalies. They were fast, sleek, and deadly, designed for rapid tracking and capture. Kane's hands moved over the controls, adjusting trajectory and activating countermeasures. He did not panic. Panic was a luxury humans could rarely afford. Instead, he calculated, predicted, and acted. The aliens' sensors picked up a false signal, a decoy Kane had planted earlier in the sector. Their fleet converged on it, believing they had located him. Kane watched from a hidden trajectory, smiling faintly. He had trained for this moment, predicting not only their approach but their assumptions, their overconfidence, and their reliance on technology. While they focused on the decoy, he moved undetected through the periphery of their search grid. He landed on a small, uncharted moon, its surface rocky and barren. Kane stepped out of the freighter, adjusting his gear to the low gravity. He moved with deliberate precision, using the terrain to mask his presence. Here, away from the patrol fleet, he could plan his next moves, gather intelligence, and prepare for the inevitable confrontation that would come. In the shadow of jagged cliffs, Kane accessed a hidden data cache he had discovered months ago. It contained fragments of intercepted communications between alien fleets, partial schematics of their experimental weapon, and coded messages hinting at the Coalition's intentions. Kane studied the information carefully, piecing together the scope of the threat. It was worse than he had feared, a weapon capable of destabilizing entire systems, wiping out colonies, and altering the balance of power in the galaxy. Humanity, as fragile as it was, would have no chance if the coalition succeeded. He allowed himself a moment of reflection. 12 years of survival, 12 years of evasion, and now the weight of humanity's fate rested on him. Kane knew the responsibility was immense, but he did not falter. Humans had survived the impossible before. They had faced extinction, defeat, and despair, yet they endured. Kane was not merely surviving for himself. He was surviving for humanity, for the countless lives that depended on him, and for the chance to turn the tide against a coalition that underestimated one simple truth. Humans never stopped fighting. Suddenly, a faint vibration through the ground caught Kane's attention. He froze, listening intently. The aliens were close, closer than he had expected. He activated a small device, one of many he carried, which emitted a high-frequency signal to scramble approaching sensors. The patrol fleet had predicted a standard hiding pattern, but Kane had altered it, ensuring they would search the wrong sectors while he remained hidden. Time passed slowly, the moon's barren landscape stretching endlessly. Kane remained alert, ready to move at a moment's notice. He reviewed every possibility in his mind: if the aliens discovered him, if the weapons testing accelerated, if reinforcements arrived. Each scenario had a contingency, each plan had an escape, and each decision relied on a single, undeniable truth: humans adapted when others could not. Night fell on the moon, the stars casting pale light across the jagged terrain. Kane rested briefly, knowing that sleep was a dangerous luxury but also necessary to maintain sharpness. He reflected on what had brought him here: decades of human struggle, ingenuity, and courage. He thought of the humans who had taught him, fought beside him, and inspired him. And he thought of the humans who would come after, who would inherit the lessons he had learned through pain, perseverance, and survival. By dawn, Kane was ready. He returned to his freighter, plotted a new course deeper into the sector, and initiated travel. The alien fleet continued their search, unaware that their prey was not only alive but several steps ahead. Kane moved with precision, navigating asteroid fields, radiation belts, and uncharted anomalies, always staying just beyond their reach. As he traveled, he prepared mentally for the challenges ahead. The Coalition's weapon would not be easy to stop, nor would their fleets be simple obstacles. But Kane had learned over 12 years of pursuit that humans thrived under pressure. They turned desperation into creativity, danger into strategy, and fear into courage. Kane embodied every human strength, every flaw refined into an advantage. The day ended with Kane approaching a dense cluster of asteroids, a natural maze that would allow him to observe the approaching patrol without being seen. He positioned his freighter among the rocks, its sensors active, its engines silent. He watched the alien fleet sweep past, misled once again by his calculated patterns and decoys. Kane smiled. They were clever, but they were not human, and humans, above all else, adapted. In the solitude of space, amidst the vast emptiness and silent stars, Elias Kane reflected on 12 years of hunting and being hunted. He thought of the battles ahead, the dangers that awaited, and the responsibility he carried. Yet he did not despair. Humanity had always faced the impossible and had always endured. And Kane, a single human veteran against the galaxy, would continue that tradition. The aliens believed they were closing in. They believed they were the hunters. But Kane knew the truth. He was the one who had prepared, adapted, and endured. They had underestimated humanity, and in that underestimation lay their greatest weakness. As the asteroids cast shadows across his freighter, Kane's mind sharpened with strategy. Each patrol route, each fleet formation, each weapon system became part of a larger plan. He would not merely survive, he would turn the tide. Humanity depended on it. The galaxy depended on it. And Elias Kane, hunted for 12 years, was ready for what came next. The dense asteroid cluster drifted silently through the void, casting long shadows across the freighter's hull. Elias Kane sat in the pilot's chair, his eyes scanning the instruments with a sharp, unyielding focus. The alien patrols had moved on for now, but he knew it was only a matter of time before they adapted, adjusted, and tried again. 12 years of hunting him had taught Kane patience. He had learned to wait, to observe, and to strike when opportunity presented itself. His mind was not on survival alone now. It was on the weapon, the Coalition's secret project that threatened entire star systems. Over the past weeks, he had intercepted fragmented communications, decoded partial schematics, and traced supply lines leading deep into Coalition-controlled space. Every piece of data painted a picture of something far more dangerous than conventional fleets or planetary invasions. The weapon could destabilize planets, disrupt energy grids across colonies, and potentially annihilate civilizations without warning. Humanity, in particular, had no defenses against it. Kane leaned back, rubbing the bridge of his nose. He had spent years preparing for this moment, training his body and mind to respond to threats with precision. He knew that the aliens' confidence stemmed from underestimating humans, and that underestimation had been his greatest advantage for over a decade. But now, the stakes were higher. This was no longer about survival. This was about the survival of millions, maybe billions, of innocent lives. He activated the freighter's sensors, scanning for hidden signals. There, a faint, encrypted transmission, barely noticeable through the static of deep space. Kane recognized it immediately. It was a relay station transmitting data between the Coalition's experimental fleet and a central command station. The signal was weak, indicating it was designed for stealth, but Kane had learned to see what others could not. He traced the source to a derelict mining facility orbiting a dead star, abandoned years ago but recently reactivated. Kane set course. The journey would be dangerous. The mining facility was located near a gravitational anomaly, a twisting field of energy that interfered with standard navigation systems. Only humans, with their ability to improvise and adapt, could navigate it without relying entirely on automated systems that the aliens would track. Kane smiled faintly. The challenge suited him. He thrived where others depended solely on machines. As he approached the facility, his sensors picked up faint signs of life. Patrol drones hovered in silent arcs around the perimeter, scanning for intruders. Kane activated a decoy system, projecting multiple false readings to confuse the sensors. The drones adjusted their patterns, chasing phantoms while Kane slipped silently toward an undetected docking bay. Inside the abandoned facility, corridors were dark and silent. Kane's boots echoed softly as he moved, each step deliberate. Dust and debris covered the floors, evidence of years of neglect, but he knew better than to trust appearances. Alien engineers had been here recently, modifying the old mining facility to serve as a relay hub for their weapon project. Kane's task was clear: gather intelligence, understand the weapon's design, and leave undetected. He reached a central control room, walls lined with panels and screens, most dark but some flickering with residual power. Kane crouched, examining a terminal. Using a portable data interface, he began downloading encrypted files. Hours passed as he worked, carefully avoiding security triggers that could alert the aliens. With each successful download, Kane pieced together fragments of the weapon's capabilities. It was a device that could manipulate gravitational fields, redirect energy flows, and potentially collapse planets into themselves. Kane's breath caught as the magnitude of the threat sank in. The Coalition had not merely planned to conquer, they planned to destroy. Entire worlds could vanish in minutes. Humanity, spread thin across colonies and outposts, had no hope against such a force if it were unleashed. And yet Kane did not despair. He had faced impossible odds before. He had survived where others perished, and he would find a way to stop this. A subtle vibration beneath his feet alerted him to approaching patrols. Kane froze, listening intently. Two drones moved in synchronized patterns, scanning for anomalies in the facility. Kane activated a small device, releasing a harmless but highly reflective dust cloud that scattered the sensors' signals. The drones paused, confused by phantom readings, allowing Kane to slip deeper into the control room's shadowed corners. While waiting, he reviewed the data he had collected. The weapon's power source was unstable, and its control systems were spread across multiple locations. Kane realized that if he could reach the primary hub, he could potentially disable the weapon before it became operational. But to do so, he would have to infiltrate the heart of Coalition space, facing not just drones, but fleets, patrols, and alien soldiers trained for one purpose: to eliminate him. Kane did not flinch at the thought. Humans, he reminded himself, excelled in adversity. They could improvise, adapt, and overcome where others failed. 12 years of being hunted had sharpened every skill he possessed. Every escape, every deception, every improvised tool had prepared him for this moment. Suddenly, the facility's alarm system flickered to life. Kane's heart raced, but only briefly. He moved with precision, following a hidden maintenance corridor that led to an emergency exit. Outside, the gravity anomaly warped light and energy, creating shimmering distortions that confused sensors and cameras alike. Kane navigated carefully, using the anomaly to mask his movement while observing patrol patterns. In the darkness, he spotted a group of alien soldiers moving toward the control room. They were heavily armed and armored, relying on advanced technology and coordination. Kane's mind raced. He had faced soldiers before, but the combination of alien discipline and technology made them formidable. He considered his options: engage and risk detection, or evade and continue the mission. Kane chose the latter. Patience, he knew, was as important as courage. He slipped through a narrow passage, following the path of least resistance. The soldiers passed by without noticing him, their sensors fooled by his careful timing and the reflections of the anomaly. Kane exhaled quietly, heart steady. Survival was not about luck. It was about preparation, observation, and calculated risk. Humanity had mastered these principles over centuries of struggle, and Kane embodied them perfectly. Reaching a hidden alcove, Kane accessed another terminal. He downloaded additional schematics, focusing on the weapon's control mechanisms and energy distribution. Patterns emerged, flaws in the design that could be exploited. The aliens had built the weapon with power and efficiency in mind, but they had not anticipated human intuition. Every safeguard had a loophole, every algorithm a predictable bias. Kane smiled faintly. Once again, human ingenuity would turn the tables. As he worked, Kane considered the larger picture. The Coalition believed that eliminating him would ensure success. They had underestimated a single human's ability to think, to adapt, and to persevere. They had hunted him for 12 years, confident in their numbers and technology, yet Kane had survived every attempt. Now he was no longer merely surviving. He was preparing to confront the weapon itself. Humanity's fate rested on his shoulders, and Kane felt neither fear nor doubt, only determination. The hours passed, and Kane moved through the facility, avoiding patrols and using his knowledge of human engineering to manipulate alien technology. He created subtle distractions, rerouted power flows, and disabled sensors without leaving a trace. Each action was deliberate, precise, and effective. Humans thrived in chaos, Kane reminded himself, because they could improvise and adapt faster than any machine or alien logic could predict. By the time the facility's patrols rotated to new positions, Kane had gathered enough intelligence to plan his next move. The weapon's central hub was heavily guarded, located in a region of space controlled directly by the Coalition. A direct assault would be suicidal, but Kane did not plan to attack. He planned to outthink, outmaneuver, and outlast. Humans were not just survivors, they were strategists, improvisers, and leaders when the stakes were highest. Kane returned to his freighter, data drive secured, and began plotting a course to a nearby asteroid field that could serve as a temporary hideout. The Coalition's fleet would eventually detect anomalies, but he would be ready. Humans had always turned disadvantage into advantage. He had survived 12 years of hunting, and now the real challenge was beginning, the confrontation with the weapon itself. As the freighter glided into the asteroid field, Kane reflected on what he had learned. The aliens' technology was formidable, their fleets organized and deadly. But they had underestimated the core of humanity, the ability to think, adapt, and endure. Kane had survived countless encounters, outsmarted fleets, and evaded the deadliest hunters in the galaxy. And now, he had the knowledge necessary to prevent a catastrophe that could destroy millions of lives. The stars twinkled through the gaps in the asteroid field as Kane prepared for the next stage of his mission. He knew the aliens would escalate their pursuit, intensify their patrols, and deploy more advanced sensors. But he was ready. 12 years of hunting had honed his skills, sharpened his mind, and strengthened his resolve. Humanity, fragile yet indomitable, had produced a single human capable of facing impossible odds and emerging victorious. Kane activated the freighter's stealth systems and settled into a pattern of slow, calculated movement. He reviewed the schematics again, committing details to memory. The weapon's control protocols, its vulnerabilities, the paths that led to the central hub, all were now within his grasp. The challenge ahead would test every skill he possessed, every lesson learned over 12 years of survival. But Elias Kane was ready. Humans had survived against extinction, against overwhelming force, and against the impossible. And now one human veteran was about to prove that no coalition, no fleet, no weapon, and no assumption could match the ingenuity, courage, and resilience of humanity. The galaxy believed they hunted him, but Kane knew the truth. He was not merely surviving. He was preparing to strike, to save humanity, and to prove that the human spirit could never be underestimated. Elias Kane floated through the outer edge of the Harath system, a dense web of asteroids and drifting debris that shielded the Coalition's most sensitive operations. The maps he had pieced together over months revealed the central hub of the weapon project, a massive orbital station, bristling with weapons, shields, and surveillance systems. Any human attempting a direct assault would be annihilated within minutes. Kane did not plan a direct assault. Humans, he reminded himself, relied on ingenuity, patience, and unpredictability. The freighter's engines hummed softly as Kane navigated through the debris. He kept low visibility, avoiding sensors and patrols. The Coalition had grown more aggressive in recent months, deploying advanced drones and stealth ships to hunt him. Yet he was prepared. Every maneuver, every trajectory, every moment of silence was calculated. He had survived 12 years of hunting, and nothing the aliens could deploy would catch him unawares. Kane's eyes scanned the control console as he observed fleet patterns. He noted the timing of patrol rotations, the distance between ships, and the blind spots in their sensor coverage. Every fleet had weaknesses, and the Coalition's arrogance ensured they relied heavily on predictable logic. Kane planned to exploit it. He charted a path through the Harath asteroid belts using gravitational anomalies to mask his approach. Alien scanners were sophisticated, but humans could improvise. Kane's mind worked in rapid calculations, balancing risk, speed, and stealth. As he approached the orbital station, a sudden alert flashed on the console. Drones had detected a minor anomaly in the asteroid field, a decoy he had left earlier to distract the fleet. He allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. The aliens' confidence remained their weakness. They believed they understood humans, but humans were always more adaptable, always more creative. Kane moved silently, following a route that avoided detection and brought him closer to the station's perimeter. The orbital station loomed above, massive and imposing. Its hull shimmered with energy fields designed to repel intruders, and turrets rotated with silent precision. Kane knew he could not confront it head-on. Any engagement would be suicidal. Instead, he studied the station from hidden vantage points, learning the rhythm of its defenses, the timing of drone sweeps, and the blind zones in the sensor grid. Knowledge, he reminded himself, was as powerful a weapon as any blaster or fleet. He found a narrow docking channel on the station's far side, used for supply ships that rarely returned in the same trajectory. Kane calculated his entry, taking into account the patrol rotations, energy shields, and gravitational fluxes caused by the station's proximity to a small nearby moon. With careful precision, he guided the freighter along the path, using bursts of manual thruster adjustments to avoid detection. The ship glided like a shadow across the station's sensor range, moving through blind zones and shadows. Inside the docking channel, Kane activated internal scanners. He identified the primary maintenance access point that led to the station's interior. It was lightly monitored, a consequence of the aliens' overconfidence. Kane donned a stealth suit, designed to dampen his heat signature and obscure his presence from motion sensors. Humans were fragile, yes, but they had learned to bend technology, adapt it, and use it in ways aliens could not predict. Kane's suit was a product of 12 years of improvisation, patched together from salvaged materials, human engineering, and sheer ingenuity. As he entered the station through the maintenance channel, Kane's senses were on high alert. The corridors were cold and metallic, lit by dim emergency lights. He moved silently, every step deliberate, every shadow a potential hiding spot. Patrol drones moved in synchronized patterns, but Kane knew their blind spots. He waited patiently, allowing them to pass before continuing deeper into the heart of the station. Reaching a junction, he paused to study the station's schematics in his portable interface. The central hub of the weapon was directly ahead, heavily guarded and surrounded by multiple layers of security. Kane noted the placement of turrets, patrols, and automated defense systems. A direct approach would trigger alarms instantly. Humans, he reminded himself, survived by being clever, not by confronting overwhelming force. Kane began plotting a series of diversions, using environmental hazards, energy surges, and the station's own protocols against it. Hours passed as Kane moved through the station. He triggered subtle energy surges in unoccupied control panels, causing minor malfunctions that would draw attention away from his path. He released harmless but reflective dust into ventilation shafts to scramble sensors. Every action was small, deliberate, and effective. By the time he reached the inner corridors, the aliens were chasing shadows, their confidence shaken by anomalies they could not explain. Kane smiled faintly. Humans thrived where others relied on order. Unpredictability was their greatest strength. Finally, Kane reached the inner sanctum of the station, a vast chamber filled with control panels, glowing energy conduits, and the central interface of the weapon. He studied the system carefully. The weapon relied on a complex network of energy nodes distributed across the station. Its main power core could be disabled only from the central hub. Kane's mind raced as he formulated a plan. A direct shutdown would trigger alarms. Instead, he would manipulate the system, redirecting power flows and exploiting weaknesses in the control algorithms. He connected his portable interface to the central terminal, bypassing encryption protocols with precision. Alien security systems activated in response, but Kane anticipated them, neutralizing automated defenses with carefully timed signal injections. Hours passed as he worked, rerouting energy, overriding failsafes, and preparing the weapon for controlled deactivation. Sweat ran down his brow, but Kane remained focused. Humanity had survived through ingenuity and determination, and now he was proving it once again. Suddenly, alarms blared. Kane's sensors detected a breach. The aliens had discovered his presence. Patrols converged from multiple corridors, heavily armed and moving with lethal efficiency. Kane did not panic. He activated a series of automated turrets he had rigged inside corridors, creating temporary obstacles and confusion. Humans were clever, he reminded himself, and patience, strategy, and improvisation could outmatch even superior firepower. Kane moved through the inner sanctum, guided by precise calculations. He released energy pulses into secondary circuits, creating diversions that pulled patrols away from the central hub. Using the shadows, the reflective surfaces of the chamber, and subtle environmental manipulation, he remained undetected. Every step was deliberate, every movement calculated to exploit the aliens' assumptions about humans. At last, Kane reached the control interface. He connected his system to the central hub, initiating the final sequence. The weapon's energy flows responded to his input, rerouted and stabilized under his careful control. Turrets deactivated, shields flickered, and the station's core systems began to shut down in a controlled manner. Kane exhaled, but there was no time for relief. The aliens were closing in, and the station's automated defenses began to adapt. Kane's mind raced. Every sequence had a contingency, every action a backup. He manipulated energy conduits, creating temporary blockages that slowed the patrols and disrupted automated targeting. The aliens were relentless, but Kane was relentless too. Humans survived by thinking, adapting, and enduring, and Kane embodied all three qualities. Minutes stretched into hours as Kane completed the shutdown. The station's weapon, the Coalition's greatest threat, was now offline, its power safely redirected. The aliens' confidence shattered. They began to retreat, confused and frustrated by the precision of a single human's actions. Kane knew the danger was not over. The Coalition would retaliate, but he had achieved the impossible. One human had neutralized a weapon designed to dominate entire systems. As he moved toward the maintenance channel to escape, Kane allowed himself a moment of reflection. Humanity had survived countless challenges, endured unimaginable hardships, and faced extinction multiple times. Yet the core of humanity, ingenuity, courage, and relentless determination, had always prevailed. Kane's journey, 12 years in the making, was a testament to that truth. He reached his freighter, carefully navigating through the outer corridors as patrols scoured the station. The engines hummed as he prepared for departure, sensors active and stealth systems engaged. The aliens believed they had hunted him for 12 years, but Kane had turned their hunt into an opportunity, outmaneuvering fleets, bypassing defenses, and neutralizing a weapon that none but a human could have stopped. As the freighter lifted from the station, Kane gazed at the stars stretching beyond the Harath system. The galaxy had underestimated humanity for centuries, assuming strength, numbers, and technology alone determined outcomes. Kane had proven otherwise. Humans survived, thrived, and prevailed through intelligence, adaptability, and courage. He set a course for uncharted space, seeking temporary refuge while he planned the next steps. The Coalition would regroup, deploy more advanced fleets, and escalate their pursuit. But Kane had changed the balance. One human, they would soon realize, was more dangerous than any fleet when driven by purpose, intelligence, and the will to protect others. The freighter slipped through asteroid fields and radiation belts, moving silently through space. Kane reviewed data from the station, consolidating intelligence and preparing for potential encounters. He thought of humanity spread across colonies, vulnerable yet resilient, fragile yet unbreakable. They had survived for millennia, adapting to each new threat, each new challenge. Kane embodied that resilience, a single human capable of confronting the impossible and emerging victorious. As the sun of a distant system rose over the horizon of a barren planet, Kane allowed himself a moment of quiet satisfaction. The Coalition's weapon was neutralized, for now, and humanity had survived another deadly threat. Yet he knew the galaxy was vast, the dangers many, and the challenges far from over. Humans would continue to face adversity, but they had a champion who had proven that a single mind, sharpened by experience and determination, could turn the tide of destiny. Elias Kane, hunted for 12 years and underestimated by every alien force that sought him, had achieved what few thought possible. He had navigated the heart of enemy territory, outsmarted patrols, and neutralized a weapon designed to dominate the galaxy. Humanity, fragile yet extraordinary, had triumphed once again, and Kane would continue to be its guardian in the shadows, a reminder that no challenge was insurmountable when faced with courage, ingenuity, and the unyielding spirit of a human. Elias Kane's freighter glided silently through the void, leaving the Harath system behind. The Coalition's orbital station, their weapon neutralized, now floated powerless among the stars. Kane's mind, however, was already working ahead. The aliens would not give up easily. Their fleets would regroup, their strategies would evolve, and their search for him would intensify. But Kane had survived 12 years of relentless pursuit, and now he faced the greatest challenge of all, ensuring that humanity was no longer merely surviving, but could defend itself against any threat the galaxy might pose. He set a course for the outpost of Veridian, a remote human colony far beyond known space. Here, Kane could analyze the data he had gathered, refine his plans, and prepare for whatever the Coalition might throw at him next. He understood that the aliens believed eliminating him would end the threat. They could not comprehend that the human spirit, embodied in one determined individual, was far more dangerous than their fleets, their technology, or their weapons. As Kane approached the planet, his sensors picked up multiple Coalition ships on distant patrols. They were scanning the sector, desperately searching for signs of his presence. Kane smiled faintly. 12 years of experience had taught him that fear of the unknown was as dangerous to his enemies as any weapon. Using asteroid fields and gravitational anomalies, he wove through the patrols, invisible to their sensors yet always aware of their positions. Upon landing, Kane was greeted by a small team of human engineers and scouts who had been expecting him. They were wary, having heard rumors of his survival and of the incredible feats he had accomplished. Yet Kane did not boast. He shared only the essentials. The Coalition's weapon had been neutralized, its systems carefully rerouted to prevent accidental detonation, and intelligence on its construction was now in human hands. The team listened in awe as Kane explained the vulnerabilities of the Coalition's technology and the strategies they had employed. What fascinated them most was not the weapon nor the fleets, but the methods Kane had used to overcome obstacles that would have destroyed most humans. Improvisation, foresight, and adaptation, the hallmarks of human survival, had made the impossible possible. Kane's journey was proof that humanity's greatest strength lay not in numbers or raw power, but in its ability to think, to endure, and to act with determination under pressure. The days that followed were filled with preparation. Kane shared his knowledge of the Coalition's fleets, their patrol patterns, and the weaknesses in their operational strategies. The engineers studied the schematics he had recovered, devising countermeasures and defensive systems that could protect human colonies in the future. Kane moved among them, offering insights, guidance, and encouragement. He reminded them that humans had survived against overwhelming odds before, and they would continue to do so. One night, as Kane stood outside the outpost watching distant stars, he reflected on everything he had endured. 12 years of being hunted, countless close calls, and endless solitude had tested him in ways most humans could never imagine. Yet through it all, he had survived, and more importantly, he had learned. Humans survived not because they were invincible, but because they adapted, persevered, and refused to surrender to fear or despair. Kane felt a quiet pride in knowing that his journey would help ensure humanity's survival for generations to come. Suddenly, a faint signal flickered on his portable interface, a coded message from the Coalition. They had discovered anomalies in their patrol sectors, and rumors of his survival were spreading faster than anticipated. Kane's eyes narrowed. The aliens were becoming desperate, more dangerous, and more unpredictable. But he did not falter. Humans thrived under adversity, and Kane had never been more ready. He activated his freighter, preparing for a mission beyond the outpost. He would travel to the heart of the Coalition's controlled territory, not to engage in direct conflict, but to ensure that their capabilities were fully neutralized. The Coalition had underestimated humanity, and Kane intended to make them understand, once and for all, that humans were not to be dismissed, controlled, or hunted without consequence. The journey through deep space was treacherous. Kane navigated asteroid belts, radiation zones, and unstable starfields, using human ingenuity to adapt to hazards that would have destroyed automated systems. He deployed subtle decoys and misleading signals, ensuring that Coalition fleets could not track him accurately. Every maneuver was calculated, precise, and deliberate. Survival, Kane reminded himself, was the first step. Victory came through understanding, planning, and adaptability. Finally, he reached the edges of the Coalition's central system, a region dense with patrols and heavily fortified outposts. Kane observed from a hidden position, studying fleet movements and defense protocols. The Coalition's arrogance was apparent in every detail. They had relied on their technology, assuming humans could not comprehend their systems or exploit their flaws. Kane's mind raced, identifying weak points, alternative pathways, and opportunities to turn their own defenses against them. He made his move under the cover of a meteor storm, navigating the freighter through gaps in fleet formations and avoiding detection. Using previously observed patrol rotations, he reached a critical relay station, one that managed communications and power distribution for multiple sections of the Coalition's fleet. Kane quickly accessed the control terminal, rerouting power flows and disrupting automated targeting systems. Within minutes, the defensive coordination of the surrounding fleets became erratic, inefficient, and vulnerable. Kane did not pause. He moved from relay station to relay station, systematically disabling or rerouting systems, creating confusion, and demonstrating the unpredictable creativity of humans. The Coalition fleets, despite their superior numbers and technology, struggled to respond effectively. Kane's tactics were unconventional, adaptive, and impossible to anticipate. He was a single human against a galaxy-spanning force, yet he operated as if orchestrating a symphony of chaos. Hours later, Kane reached the final relay point, a massive station that served as the nerve center for the Coalition's operations. He accessed the systems, exploiting vulnerabilities he had discovered over months of observation and study. Automated defenses faltered, energy conduits overloaded in controlled bursts, and communication networks collapsed in confusion. Kane's work ensured that the Coalition could no longer mount an immediate offensive, and their technological advantage was severely compromised. As he completed his tasks, Kane allowed himself a brief moment of reflection. The aliens had underestimated humanity for centuries, assuming that survival depended solely on strength, numbers, and technology. Kane had demonstrated otherwise. Humans thrived through ingenuity, perseverance, and courage, the ability to improvise solutions under impossible pressure. One human, acting with knowledge, patience, and determination, had neutralized a galaxy-spanning threat that fleets, weapons, and alliances could not achieve. He set a course back to the outpost, his mind already planning for the future. Humanity would need defenses, strategies, and knowledge to protect itself from the Coalition and any other galactic threats. Kane knew his role was far from over. He had survived, neutralized weapons, and outmaneuvered fleets, but the survival of humanity required more than one individual. It required preparation, training, and the passing on of knowledge. Returning to the outpost, Kane was greeted by a small crowd of humans, engineers, scouts, and leaders, who had been monitoring his progress. He shared his findings, demonstrated the Coalition's vulnerabilities, and helped them establish protocols that could defend human colonies for years to come. Humanity's future, once fragile and uncertain, now had a foundation built on knowledge, foresight, and resilience. Weeks later, Kane stood outside the outpost once more, gazing at the stars. Humanity was no longer merely surviving. It was respected, prepared, and capable. The aliens who had hunted him for 12 years had underestimated the power of human ingenuity and perseverance. Kane, a single human veteran, had proven that one individual, guided by determination, intelligence, and courage, could change the course of galactic events. He allowed himself a small, satisfied smile. 12 years of hunting, survival, and strategy had led to this moment. The coalition fleets would regroup, but they would now know that humans were not weak, predictable, or incapable of defending themselves. Humanity had earned its place among the stars, not through numbers alone, but through the qualities that made them unique: adaptability, intelligence, courage, and the unyielding will to survive. Elias Kane, the human veteran who had been hunted for over a decade, had ensured that humanity would endure. The galaxy had underestimated a single human, and in doing so had been reminded that humans were not to be dismissed. One mind, one will, and one determined spirit had outsmarted fleets, neutralized weapons, and reshaped the balance of power. Humanity's resilience, brilliance, and courage had triumphed. As Kane prepared to depart once more, venturing into uncharted space to continue safeguarding humanity's future, he reflected on what had been achieved. The coalition would learn, adapt, and change their strategies, but humans had done the same for millennia. Survival, Kane knew, was not just about strength. It was about knowledge, ingenuity, and the courage to act when others faltered. Humanity embodied those qualities, and Kane had proven it on a scale the galaxy could not ignore. The stars stretched endlessly before him, a canvas of infinite possibility. Kane's journey, marked by 12 years of evasion, survival, and intelligence, had shown that humans were not merely participants in the galaxy. They were forces to be reckoned with. One human had ensured that humanity could survive, thrive, and prepare for the challenges ahead. And in that truth lay a simple, unassailable fact: humans, clever and resilient, could never be underestimated. Elias Kane set the freighter's course into the unknown, a solitary figure against the vastness of space. Yet he was not alone, for he carried the spirit of all humanity, the creativity, perseverance, and courage that had allowed a single human to achieve the impossible. The galaxy had hunted him for 12 years, unaware that he was not merely surviving, but preparing, adapting, and shaping a future in which humanity would endure. And in that silence, amidst the stars and the void, Elias Kane, human veteran and symbol of perseverance, smiled. The galaxy had underestimated humanity, and the consequences of that underestimation had reshaped the course of history forever. Humanity had triumphed, not through sheer force, but through the brilliance, resilience, and indomitable will of a single human.